Well, g'day Harbour Youth, this is Tom Batty here, and this week, as we continue looking through Hebrews, we're asking the question about guilt. Like, what do you do with the guilty feeling that you've got because you've stuffed up? Now, I don't know if your experience is like mine, but when I was in year 6, I kind of felt alright about myself and kind of felt comfortable. And then as I continued on through high school, I became more and more guilt-ridden as I'd stuffed up more and more. Maybe that's your experience, maybe not, but the reality is all of us kind of have some sense of guilt, and we've got to figure out what do we do with it, and what does the Bible tell us to do with our guilt as well. And so I remember for me, even though guilt got worse as I continued to stuff up through high school, even from year 6 in the beginning, I remember having a particularly guilty moment one day when me and a mate had been busted by the principal for something dumb. It was every day after school we'd walk home and there was this house that was for sale, and we used to undo the wing nuts on the for sale sign that was out the front, and we used to grab the sign and then throw it over the fence. It was dumb, it was stupid. Why did we do it? I don't know, because we were year 6 punks, but we wanted to do that. Got busted by the principal, and I remember, as well as being punished, probably the worst thing about it was that the principal said to us, look, I'm going to get you guys to tell your parents about what you'd done. I don't know if you've ever had to do that before, but it was just, like, it was so heavy walking home. Like, I felt like my feet were just dragging the whole way because I didn't want to tell my parents and, tell them that I'd kind of rejected their relationship with me and I'd done this. I just felt a whole sense of shame and guilt, and I didn't really know what to do with, like, should I take her some flowers, or like, what do you do in that situation? Because the reality is, the guilt that we have is, well, it needs to be dealt with by God. So I want to read out to you Hebrews chapter 9, verse 9, and this one, my own handwriting this week, it says, is that upside down for you? Maybe if I do this, I'll be able to read it from here. Okay, it says, we cannot make our consciences clear by offering gifts and sacrifices. Okay. We can't fix the problem of our guilt and our suffering, or our guilt and our pain because of what we've done wrong. So what do? Well, it's tricky. See, this is why I reckon the idea of self-esteem sucks so much. I grew up during school being told that it's good to have self-esteem. You've got to have a high view of yourself. And what is self-esteem? It's that idea of assessing yourself and seeing if you match up. And the idea is that hopefully in the end you'll feel confident about yourself. You'll feel good. But the only people that can feel like they've got a good self-esteem are the ones that are lying to themselves. Because if you're a human, then you've stuffed up in some way, and you will feel like you've got a guilty conscience. And so to have good self-esteem requires you to lie about yourself, lie to yourself, and say, you know what, in the end, I'm an okay person, regardless of all the stuff-ups that I've made, regardless of the wrongs that I've done to all the people around me that I love and care for. See, this is why self-esteem sucks so much. Now, recently, over the last 5 years, there's been a growing trend to get self-esteem, chuck it in the bin, and replace it with self-compassion. Have you heard of self-compassion before? In a sense, it's kind of new, like it's got a little bit of spotlight recently, but it's old as well. It's originally from the Buddhist ideas, which are about 2,500 years old. And so instead of self-esteem being an assessment of yourself and seeing whether or not you measure up and should have confidence about yourself, self-compassion says to look at yourself with warmth and acceptance. I like that. I think that's miles better, and I reckon if non-Christians around the world were embracing self-compassion over self-esteem, then the world would be a genuinely better place, okay? But in the end, can you see what the problem with self-compassion is? What if I have wronged somebody who is not myself? What if I've wronged another? Like, don't I need other person compassion? And particularly, what if I've wronged God? How then do I kind of bring and deal with that? And so this is where the problem remains. Like, I've got guilt towards other people, not just guilt at myself for not living up to my own standards. And so this is where we keep going in Hebrews, and we get up to wrong piece of paper. So the first bit that we read out is Hebrews 9 verse 9, that we have guilty consciences because of our sin, and we can't fix them by offering gifts and sacrifices. But what do we need? Okay, here's the solution. This is from Hebrews chapter 9, verse 14, and it says, can you read that? Christ offered his blood to cleanse our consciences from acts that lead to death. Not only has the wrong stuff that I've done given me a guilty conscience, a non-clean slate before God, all of that stuff means that in the end I'm on a one-way street to hell. But the cool thing is that God decided to take the punishment for all of my sins by sending his son Jesus with his perfect blood and perfect offering and perfect sacrifice, so that my conscience can be cleansed, because all the punishment has been paid for by Jesus. It says that Christ offered his blood. In year 6, when I'd done the wrong thing and I came walking home, I was petrified. Like, I deserved punishment. I deserved to be, locked up or grounded or something like that, because I'd wronged my mum. But do you know what happened? When I walked home, instead of walking into punishment, she could see that I was upset, and she welcomed me with loving, open arms. And I got a big cuddle from my mum, because she loved me, and she bore the cost of my wrongdoing, and in the end she showed me mercy. Now that's a small taste of what God does for us in Christ. He stands there with arms wide open saying, guys, I want to let you in. I want you to not go to hell, but I want you to go to heaven, and I've made the way by dealing with your guilt, by putting it on my perfect son when he paid the perfect sacrifice. Sound good? How does that make you feel? Do you feel guilty? Or do you feel thankful? Is that better than self-esteem? Is that better than self-compassion? Yeah, that's God's compassion. Catch you later.